Hi, welcome back to Calm 100, and we are going to be focusing on chapter 9, and we're continuing the conversation about interpersonal relationships, but now we're going to focus on how to manage them. We've already built them, we have these relationships, and so now it's like, how do I take care of them? I truly like to think about interpersonal relationships as a plant and how we need to constantly care for it just because it's there. It's not going to survive unless we take care of it. We have to give it water, we have to fertilize it every once in a while, give it some sunlight, maybe kind of like trim it a little bit. So I really want you to think about that as we have this conversation about managing interpersonal relationships. You can see that our objectives, we have four of them. This is kind of a shorter chapter than we're used to. And we're going to talk about ways to self-disclose in order to build these relationships stronger. And then also how to manage tensions. We're going to have tensions, but we don't want the relationship to end. And then successful strategies for sustaining, for keeping these relationships. And then also how to support a friend in need, how to give supportive communication and being there when they need us most. So here's our definition for self-disclosure. This is the kind of information that we want to share with others. It's revealing private information about ourselves to others. And I think a big part of this too is deciding what to share and when to share it. So it's a key part in building and also sustaining these relationships. And when we disclose to others, we reveal aspects that we had hidden before, they were private, but now we feel like it's okay to share. Now, I always love to bring up the example of trauma dumping. We don't want to trauma dump on someone the first time we meet them because it's just too much information, right? It's too much. It can make the other person feel awkward hearing all these troubles in your life. So when you're going to engage in trauma dumping, it's nice to do it with someone that you've built a relationship with. You've already disclosed a little bit about yourself and they've already disclosed a little bit about themselves, making it a safe place and you feel comfortable and not any kind of extreme awkwardness, right? So we're going to get into a theory, and this is called the social penetration theory. It's by Altman and Taylor, 1973. I like to share that because this is a pretty old theory, right? It's been around. There's a ton of research on it. If you've ever seen the movie Shrek, they make a reference to it because this theory is also known as the onion theory. And so what I want you to imagine is you're an onion, you have these layers, and you slowly peel back the layers, revealing information about yourself. And so this photo kind of goes into showing all the different layers we have. Now, our book only talks about three. I understand this photo has four, but we're going to just really focus on the three. And then also breadth and depth, which is on the next slide. So with these layers, right, our first layer that everybody can see is our outermost peripheral layer. It's about ourselves, usually our demographic characteristics. I know your book says here, this kind of talks about, your age, your gender, your ethnicity. Anyone can kind of see this when they look at you. They can kind of understand this. I think about when I go to the grocery store and I'm trying to pick an onion, I'm trying to pick the best looking one, right? And so with ourselves, those layers, that's what we kind of already show to everybody. That's that first layer. Some other books and material, they talk about this as the superficial layer because there's nothing really interesting here. It's just the way you look, right? And so when we peel back those layers through self-disclosure, talking about ourselves, building relationships with others, we get into intermediate layers, also known as the intimate layer. And this kind of contain our attitudes and our opinions. Can you see how we're getting a little bit more comfortable talking about ourselves? What you like, what you don't like. Maybe you're thinking about hey, I feel comfortable sharing this with you. Peeling back a little bit. And then we have central layers, which is that personal, it's also the core in a sense. And this is, remember, I think it was chapter 2 or so, talking about self-awareness, self-concept, self-esteem, our values, even our fears and personality traits. We're really feeling okay sharing this with someone. Now, I do imagine this onion, if we take a knife to it and we just cut down through in the middle, first time we're meeting, it's going to be kind of blunt. It's going to be traumatizing. And so we need to peel back those layers. The Shrek reference, he talks about how ogres are like onions and they have layers. I love that because this theory came out in the 70s, but Shrek came out in like early 2000s. And it's like, hey, we're talking about calm theory here. Now let's talk about breadth and depth. So, with depth, we're going to look at revealing of ourselves that occurs during relationship development. This is how deep you talk about topics. So, on a first date, you're not going to get too deep into things, but you're going to share about yourself. You're going to get through that outermost layer of like who you are, and then you get into your thoughts and your opinions of like maybe what you're doing, going to school, work, what your goals are, things like that. The depth of how deep. Now, if you're on a first date and it's like, tell me the last time you cried, or do you want to have kids right away? That can be kind of awkward. So we have to gradually get deeper with these topics, which leads to breath. So breath is sharing more aspects of ourselves at each layer. It's the range of topics we're talking about. I think on a first date, there's a lot of breath. We're talking about like, what's your favorite movie? What kind of music do you listen to? What about your family? Like, we can get into all these topics, but we don't get too deep into them because we're not comfortable yet talking to these people. But gradually through time, we're able to have more discussions about anything in the world, and we're able to share our deeper thoughts, which builds to intimacy. So, through intimacy, the feelings of closeness between us and others built from breadth and depth. So, we need these to really like figure out this person, get to their core, and just feeling like comfortable and close. That's what we're looking for. So, I really, really love this theory, and it helps with our self disclosure, choosing when we're going to share things, when we're not going to share things. So, you want to communicate self disclosure. How do you do it, right? First off, self-disclosure, it appears to promote mental health and it's going to relieve stress. We like to talk to people. We like to share things about what we're feeling, our thoughts, our emotions. It's really bad for us to bottle things up. It's bad for us to bottle things up mentally and physically and for our health. So we need to have those people to self-disclose. Now, number two, I find it so interesting that people self-disclose more during text-based online interactions than during face-to-face. I want you to question, why is that so? Why do we feel comfortable behind a screen, no matter what size, if it's your computer or if it's your phone? And the whole deal with that is we're not worried about like looking at the person when we tell them a secret. If we tell someone a secret face to face, we might be reading their nonverbals, thinking like, oh man, they think I'm a bad person now, or, we're questioning like too much about it. It says here, well, I wrote here that we feel safe behind a screen. We feel okay, and then we can send that text and kind of put our phones away. But also, and your book doesn't mention this, I think it's important to note that we can really tailor our messages the way we want to versus face to face when we just start babbling and talking and saying whatever we want. That vulnerability and the risk comes out. So when we're able to kind of pause and think, what am I going to text right now? You feel safer. Then also through communicating self-disclosure, despite common beliefs, little evidence it exists supporting that stereotype that men can't share their feelings in relationships. I know there's stereotypes, so like men don't talk about their relationships, men don't talk about their feelings or anything like that. It's like, actually, that's not true. They do talk about their feelings. That's just a stereotype our society and culture has built. Now, I did find this interesting. Your book mentions that men and women both self-disclose more to other women. And so they just feel safer doing so. They feel more seen and understood. Our last one here about communicating self-disclosure is that in all cultures, people are going to vary widely in the degree to which they self-disclose. And I think that's totally true, you know. Some people love to self-disclose. They're open books. They want to talk about what's going on in their lives all the time. And then some people, they want to be more private. And that's just their own choice. It doesn't really deal too much with culture, but it's just more individually speaking of like what you feel comfortable with. Please always remember when you're going to self-disclose, you're communicating self-disclosure, what are you comfortable with and what do you want to actually self-disclose? And it's okay to keep things private. It does help when you self-disclose, but just make sure you're in a comfortable environment. So here's some skills to help you with self-disclosure. And first off, know your thoughts and your feelings. Kind of understand what am I thinking and feeling right now, and this will help you be able to put into perspective. And then know your audience. I know that I love to self-disclose to my mom. I love to self-disclose to my friends. But then when I go to work, when I think about my audience, it's like, well, how much should I really tell them about my life? Do I need to tell them about my relationship problems or anything like that? It's like, maybe not necessarily. Now, you don't want to make assumptions about gender or culture because this is where we get into stereotypes and we want to stay away from that. We also don't want to force others to self-disclose. Yes, it's better when we're able to get to know someone and you're self-disclosing and they're self-disclosing as well. That is very important. However, if they are not self-disclosing to you, there's a reason there, and we don't have to pry and make them feel uncomfortable or awkward. So let's just not force them. It's all about feeling comfortable here. But when people do self-disclose to you, you have to really actively listen and express empathy. This is huge in just being a competent communicator, of just being a kind human being a good friend, romantic partner, whatever your role is in this situation. We need to treat self-disclosure kindly, and we need to treat it like a gift, like you're sharing this with me, so I want to appreciate it in a sense, because hopefully they are also doing the same, right? So now we're going to kind of change topics and talk about managing relationship tensions. No, we're going to have arguments. We're going to have moments in these established relationships of like, what am I doing? And so let's define relational dialectics first. These are competing impulses or tensions that arise towards feelings with our relationship partners. I like to look at it as the pushes and pulls. So when you're in these relationships and you're trying to decide, like, well, how open should I be with them with my self-disclosure? Do I have to tell them everything that's ever happened in my life? Or is it okay to have some things private, right? Now, dialectics are not necessarily bad, but I think that they're going to occur naturally as you become more intimate, as you engage in more breadth and depth. And as you're talking more, these tensions are going to kind of appear, and you're like, well, how do I manage this? Because I care about this relationship, but I also care about my individuality and I care about them, right? So we have three of them here. That's what we're going to talk about in the next three slides. And these competently managing these tensions, it's going to help us with our relationships. And it's okay to have these tensions. We just got to know, how do I manage it? So first off, we have openness versus protection. So this is when we're trying to decide, okay, how much do I want to tell them and how much do I want to like keep for myself? So we mutually share private information with others, then relationships, they're going to naturally develop, of course. But too much openness, that can make the other person uncomfortable, feeling like we've lost our privacy. Like now my secret, it's your secret too. What if you tell someone else? That's going to make me feel vulnerable. It does lead to another theory, which we're not going to get too deep into, but the communication privacy management theory. This one is where we create informational boundaries. I'm really big on this, and I want you to be big on this too. You know, you carefully choose the kind of private information you reveal and the people that you share it with. So I want you to think about secrets that you share with like your mom. Are they the same secrets that you're going to share with your best friend? Probably not, right? And so that's okay because we have boundaries. What's appropriate to talk about, what you feel safe and comfortable sharing with this person. Now, we do have communication rules, and these are the conditions in which you and your partner or you and the other person, you think about what can we talk about and what can't we talk about. Like, what are the sensitive topics that you have between each other? How can you discuss these topics? And then who else should have access to this information? Not everybody needs access to all your information, but when you have these rules, you're just kind of creating healthy boundaries. Your book uses an example of a romantic couple. They're long distance, and the girl goes out with friends every week, like girls' night, and that she goes dancing, and that sometimes other men approach her and her friends, and that they like flirt with them or talk to them, and then she leaves and then goes and calls her boyfriend. Now she shares all this information, and then the boyfriend doesn't really like hearing that guys are talking to her and her friends. So they come up with the rule of like, hey, when she goes out and if boys are talking to her and her friends, maybe she shouldn't share that with her boyfriend, right? We're just protecting each other, getting into the key term here, openness versus protection. Protecting that information because you're protecting the other person's maybe just feelings and thoughts, right? Now, if you don't like that example, I didn't really love that example. I understand it, but I didn't love it. And so that just shows that communication rules are going to vary and be different for everybody in their relationships. Now, the second dialectic is autonomy versus connection. Autonomy really focuses on like you as an individual, you feeling like you have the say versus connection as a we. So people are going to form close relationships mostly out of a desire to bond with other human beings. And of course, we want that connection, right? If we come to feel so connected though to our partners, then we might feel like our own identity is going to dissolve. Like, who am I if I'm not in this relationship? Am I anybody? We may choose to pull back, trying to reclaim some of our independence here. And this can be really difficult for family dynamics. So think about this. You're a child in a family and you're growing up, and this is like kind of who you are. You have a strong connection with everybody. But then as you become a teenager, you have more autonomy, more independence. Maybe you get a car, you start driving yourself places. Maybe you're coming home later. You're thinking about college, where you're going to go, and then you go off to college and you move out. And it's just hard on the family dynamic because for so long you were seen as the child, as the kid, right? But the autonomy is that you're becoming an adult, you know? And so it's okay to have that independence, but also how are you going to continue this family relationship? See, here's our last one, which is novelty versus predictability. When I look at this one, I think of new stuff versus the same old stuff. Now, I love predictability. When I think about my romantic relationship, I love the predictability that I can come home at night and my partner has made me dinner every night. I'm appreciative of that. I know that he likes to help out. I'm the one that works like longer hours. And so the predictability of that, he's going to be here, he's going to take care of the house. That's nice. Now, after eating at home, every night for weeks and weeks, I get kind of bored of it. And it's like, hey, I need some novelty. Let's go out, right? Let's go to a new restaurant. Let's go and like just see something that's not our dining room table. That's what this tension's all about. This tension is about people's need for excitement and change, but also predictability that can be known as stability. And this is kind of nice. We like that, right? Romances are more successful when partners act in predictable ways because it's gonna help us reduce uncertainty. But predictability, yeah, it can trigger boredom. And so you need to share novel experiences with your partner. I think about looking at this cartoon like every night, if you're both looking at your phones separated from each other, then that predictability of like, okay, now it's time to doom scroll, it's not going to be good. So you need to think of more novel ways, maybe putting your phones away at night, talking to each other. It's important to think about all the like silly things you see in the media, like date nights, going to new restaurants, cooking classes, art classes, museums, going on trips. We need to do this because that is the novelty that we need, that excitement. I really, really love this quote. And this quote kind of goes into the next topic that we're going to have right now. And it says that we control the destiny of our relationships through the communication choices we make. So your book discusses about how a family that's kind of scattered all around the country, they make time to talk to each other. Every week they have multiple text messages, they're sending each other TikToks or emails. And then every Sunday night they have like a Zoom meeting and they sit and they talk to each other. You have to invest in your relationships in order for them to work. And so when you have that control, that's how your relationships are going to be sustained and that's how they're going to be happy. I want you to think about if you're the type of friend who invites others out versus do you wait to be invited? Because if we constantly wait to be invited, then we're just giving everybody else the control of our friendship, of our relationship. It's like, no, we need to have that control. And so, with sustaining relationships, we're going to get into relational maintenance. I want you to think about how when your relationships they've been formed, you've already had the self-disclosure. And so with this maintenance, you need to have specific behaviors to keep the relationship strong. You need to ensure that each party continues to draw satisfaction from the relationship, feeling good about it. Now, partners who do engage in frequent maintenance, they often possess a communal attitude towards their relationship. And I like thinking about this because, hey, we together need to work on this relationship. Together, we need to keep this plant alive. Now, you want to focus on the partner's needs of a sense of love. Are they feeling loved versus my desire for self-gain? I don't need to focus too much about me. I need to make sure that they are happy, which will in turn make me happy. Now, with relational maintenance, we need to focus on these three characteristics that will help us trying to sustain our relationship. There's a lot of research out about this specific topic, just so you know. So lots more here from our book and the research. But first off, we have positivity. And so with positivity, this is communicating in like a cheerful and optimistic fashion. You need to be positive towards your partner. You need to do favors for them, maybe give unexpected gifts. I feel love language is kind of coming out here, but just being positive towards them. Now, your book does list three different ways of when we use positivity. We can use it to make interactions more enjoyable. We can make an effort to build others up just by giving them compliments and then try to be fun, upbeat, and optimistic. We have to really put ourselves out there and be positive towards them. Then we have assurance, and this is just assuring them, like, hey, I am happy. I am here. Your book says messages that emphasize how much your relationship partners mean to you, how important the relationship is, and then also showing that we have a secure future together. I know just saying those simple words of like, you make me happy, we have to say that over and over throughout our relationships. We can't just say that in the very beginning and then that's it, right? We need to remind them because I know that we want to be reminded as well. Now, it says here that we can regularly tell our partners how important they are to us, talk about future plans, and then lastly, do and say things to demonstrate the depth of our feeling. Gotta show that love and that appreciation. And then lastly, here's the main word of our chapter is self-disclosure. We gotta continually engage in it. Just because, again, we've had this established relationship, we're sustaining it, we still need to share what's on our minds. We need to prioritize the focus of our attention and think about how we can share that with the other person. Now, through the self disclosure, your book has three ways as well. You can tell your partners about your own fears, about your own vulnerabilities, just sharing more with them. You can also share your thoughts and emotions and then encourage them to disclose. Don't push them, but encourage them and tell them it's a safe space and that you're interested and you want to know. These three characteristics, though, are huge for trying to sustain that relationship. And we gotta continue to water the plant of the relationship through this maintenance. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about is supportive communication. Talked about tensions. And so sometimes when you're in a relationship or with your friends, you can think to yourself, oh, my friend is going through a hard time. How can you deal with supportive communication? Because this is a tension in a sense. So we express emotional support, offer, personal assistance to lovers, family members, friends, coworkers who need it. And you need to think to yourself, how can I best be there for this person? How can I engage in communication competence here? And so these are ways to do so. This is the last thing I'm going to talk to you about today. So first off, you got to make sure the person is ready to talk, right? If your friend is going through, let's say, a breakup and you see them at school, that might not be the best time to talk about, like, hey, how are you feeling today now that you've been single for 2 days, right? So you got to make sure that the person is ready to talk and then maybe try to find the right place and time. It might be nice to invite them out, send them a text and say, like, hey, let's go get coffee. I would love to catch up with you. That's kind of like inviting a way of like, let's have a discussion. Now it's good to ask good questions because it shows that you're interested. It will also help steer the conversation, keeping like on track and showing that you care. This one's important. Legitimize, but don't minimize what they're saying. Even if you don't really necessarily agree that it's a problem or you don't understand what they're so upset about, just try to legitimize it and think like, okay, so what's actually happening here? Just speaking clearly, you're the one with the clear level head and they're the ones that are upset. Now, by listening actively, you'll be able to catch every little thing, and they're going to see that you're listening actively, and they're going to appreciate that. You want to offer advice cautiously. You don't want to just come in and be like, you got broken up, let me tell you how to fix it. Like, maybe they don't want to talk about that, they just want to vent. By showing your concern and giving them praise and saying, you're doing a good job, I'm here for you, giving them assurances that you're not going away and that you're there to help them. That's going to really mean a lot when you're sustaining this friendship and relationship with them. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I liked this chapter, but I know it was kind of on the shorter side. But these are all ways for us to sustain relationships and keep them, even when we deal with some type of tension. And definitely, I encourage you to go on YouTube and look up Shrek and look up Onion Theory, and you can see the clip. It's like 2 minutes long. It's fun. Alrighty, I hope you have a good one. I'll see you later.